All right, so Gerald Griffith here again with Guide to 575, where we're all about things happening here in the I-575 corridor. We were shooting another video clip this morning in one of our community spotlights, and I stopped down here at Maple Street here in the Kroger Shopping Center near the intersection of Town Lake and Eagle Drive, and ran into Mr. Sean Jackson himself, who's running for District 5 of the school board. And so I thought I'd take a moment to invite him out, and this is a completely unplanned interview, so it's not polished or anything like that, which I think is great because it'll give me a chance to ask him some questions and him to have a chance to answer back without either of us having had a lot of time to prepare or script it or anything like that. So welcome to this quick interview, Sean.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine.
All right, well, great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me, and hopefully I can learn a little more about you because I've heard your name and had never had a chance to actually research you or meet you in person. So I think it was great that we had a chance to run into each other today.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Awesome. So you're running for school board?
I am running for school board.
All right. What inspired you to do that?
So my original reason for getting in school board, or the race for school board, was during COVID. I have 4 young girls who are in the Cherokee County School District who at some point, I think it was at the height of the pandemic, we felt like we were sending our children into a war zone without protection. Didn't feel like the school district was necessarily doing everything they could to protect our kids, from masking to social distancing. Just didn't seem like enough was being done. And made it a point that, I wasn't going to be on the sidelines anymore, that I needed to get out there and fight for my kids. So when the opportunity to run for school board came about, I jumped off the sidelines, got in the fight, and thought, well, this is going to be my chance to, not feel like everything's out of my control. I can get on the board, have a voice for folks out there to protect the kids a little better. If God forbid we ever go through a pandemic again, I'd be able to do something about it other than just, being angry at home.
Awesome.
With my kids.
Well, you mentioned you have some kids in the school system.
I do.
One or more than one?
I have 4. I have 4 girls. I have one at E.T. Booth. I have another at Etowah High School, and my twins are at Bascom Elementary.
Awesome. Well, I happen to have 2 kids in the school district. Well, one graduated, so I guess I just have one left, who is a football player over at Etowah.
Oh,
He's
right.
a rising 10th grader, and then a daughter who just finished her first year down at KSU.
Great.
So I have a vested interest in
As do
what
I.
you're all about.
Yes.
So before I ask you some questions specifically about school board and the election and things like that, what is it you wish people knew about you outside of politics or school board or things like that? Just what is it that someone may benefit from knowing about you as a person that they may not otherwise gain through simply looking at the website?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Something about me, I don't go to my extremes one way or the other.
Okay.
Right. I'm really good about going down the middle, understanding where people are at, understanding their perspectives, and working with people that necessarily wouldn't work together. Right. Bringing people together. I know your question mentioned, without politics or anything like that. One of the things with the school board race here in Cherokee County is that it is a political seat, right?
Okay.
We have to be affiliated with a major political party when we decide to run. To me, that's a bit unfortunate because it doesn't allow the voter to necessarily vote for who they want to vote for. Right. The sad thing is there's a lot of Republicans here in Cherokee County that aren't going to vote for a Democrat no matter what. And that's unfortunate because I feel that everybody should vote for who the best candidate is.
Right.
And who they think will do the best in protecting our students, supporting our teachers, and listening to those parents. But I do with 20 years being in corporate America, I've done my fair share of bringing people together and working on projects and project management that, and getting past snags on a project that I think I could bring a great wealth of experience to sitting on the school board.
Great. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times bringing people together, and it's often a phrase we hear in different avenues of politics
Sure.
or business and things like that. And I think it's one that bears a little more scrutiny in terms of what does that mean to you when you say bringing people together, and how do you see people in that particular regard?
Yeah, I think, bringing people together, what I mean by that is by seeing eye to eye.
Okay.
Knowing that, I may have a different experience than you might have
Right.
in your life, but still being able to come together for a common goal. And it's understanding our differences and knowing our differences and not ignoring those differences,
Right.
but rather going that extra step to understanding where that other person is coming from, so that you can effectively communicate and work together and do things. In our school district, when we talk about people, I think diversity matters. I think diversity matters in our school district. And it's not just a matter of saying, they're Hispanic, they're black, whatever it is. I think we need to go the extra mile to understand those differences, to see eye to eye, and celebrate those differences, right?
Now, you mentioned Hispanics, blacks,
Yes.
different racial makeups and things like that in terms of diversity.
Yeah.
Recently, there was a big issue concerning someone that the district wanted to bring in, Cecilia Lewis, I believe is her name.
Yes.
And that turned into somewhat of a spectacle,
Yes.
to say the least. And it's obviously something that touched a lot of nerves.
It did.
On both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that situation and how it unfolded?
Yeah, so, Cecilia Lewis coming in was a chance for our school district to take major leaps forward, right?
Okay.
To start understanding those differences and the diversity that I spoke of earlier. It was an embarrassment, I think, for Cherokee County as a whole on how that turned out. I don't think everybody tried to really understand the impact that she would have made on our school district, on our administration, on our teachers, on our students. It would have been a step forward to understanding diversity and equity and inclusion, right? Which she was coming in to kind of educate everybody on. I think as a parent, I can put my parent hat on and tell you as a parent, I was really disheartened because that happening kind of told me, okay, there's a roadblock here in Cherokee County School District where, things aren't going to progress the way they should in terms of understanding diversity and how it works. So, yeah, I guess disheartened would be a very good word to describe how I felt personally.
Well, staying in the vein of the school board and things of that nature, how would you rate the current state of things in the classroom as far as what kids are being taught about diversity, and what might you do a little different?
Yeah, it's hard in a school district such as Cherokee County's to talk diversity because there isn't a lot of it, right? Our classrooms aren't chock full of different cultures and different races. And of course, from school to school, it changes here and there. But for the most part, we're not real diverse. Now, that being said, coming to the board, I think it's not something that would change overnight. If and when I'm elected, I'm still just one person in a seat of 7. So it's kind of hard to say that me being on that board is going to really change things overnight. However, I do think that I'll be able to represent a certain amount of people here in Cherokee County that haven't had a voice. And that's important because you're talking thousands of people that haven't had a voice on the Cherokee County School Board. As a school board member, there's things I could support. I could support our teachers and our administration that are working on implementing diversity and things like that on our campuses. Diversity weeks, celebrating cultures from an everyday perspective in the classroom, not shying away from diversity, but talking about different backgrounds that children are bringing, and of course looking at training for our teachers and administration on how to build a diverse classroom, a campus that's full of diversity. I think all those things combined will help move our school board forward in supporting a county that is further diversifying every day, right? More and more people moving here, and more people need to be served. And the school board needs to understand that.
Well, one of the things, from my own personal experience being here is, I mentioned this in our pre-interview part about, I think there are always the extremes, and then there's where people are in the middle. For instance, right after the George Floyd situation, right around the start of COVID, one of the things I thought was rather remarkable was to have an experience where I was sitting with a friend of mine downtown Woodstock having lunch, and there was one white guy standing at the intersection with a sign that said Black Lives Matter. He stood there by himself at that corner.
Yeah.
And I just sat there thinking to myself, there are people who understand that saying Black Lives Matter is not the antithesis of being inclusive of everyone.
Right.
It was simply a matter that says, in my opinion, I always add the word to, right? So it was Black Lives Matter too.
Yeah.
It wasn't instead of or in spite of or anything like that. It was always, how does diversity speak to the entire body of people in the community, not simply one versus the other.
Right.
So when I sit there and I watch this one person who didn't look like me
Right.
stand there and represent a cause that directly affected me,
Right.
it was very good.
Yeah.
It was a good thing to see. And then later, to go back to that same intersection and see that the people lining that street from here in our community, it was a very broad spectrum.
Yeah.
There were white families, there were black families,
Yes.
there were kids, there were seniors, all standing there supporting a common cause that everyone deserved a certain level of respect and fair treatment.
Yeah.
Both, in the civil society and also as far as how they're treated within legal systems and things like that. And so I think when we say diversity, we also have to make sure we take a moment to explain that diversity is not a either or
Right.
proposition. It's not a me against you proposition. It's a I matter too proposition. And you matter as well.
Yes.
So are you originally from this area?
I'm not. We moved out here, my wife, 4 kids, we moved out here from Southern California. It'll be 5 years in August that we've been here. So yeah, I think the lack of diversity has been shocking, to say the least, in Cherokee County. There isn't a lot of it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
that from that standpoint, there isn't. Thankfully, I can say that while you have that large, well, not large, but that loud group of people who.
Yes.
Who espouse one extreme position and maybe sometimes the other, that my personal experiences have not been to the extreme. I hear of them and I certainly understand they happen.
Yeah.
But as someone, I actually do live streaming at a local church that is predominantly, if you can go to the end of predominant, it would be predominantly white,
Yeah.
but I've never felt like it was forced for them to accept my presence there.
That's great.
And that's a good thing, and I think it's important to acknowledge that there are plenty of people in the community
Yes.
that look beyond that in a heartbeat and have no problem welcoming and accepting people, as long as we can treat everyone fairly and respectful, that you're welcome to be there.
Yeah.
And I often challenge people of color in my own community to make sure that you're not assuming that because you don't see people that look like you there, that is an exclusionary thing.
Correct.
So what I've learned, I try to teach my kids, is that you have to be comfortable being the first
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes.
And it's not enough to simply say, well, they don't have any black people over there. Well, that doesn't mean that black people aren't welcome there. It simply means that a person of color has not stepped over there and introduced themselves and said, hey, may I have a seat at the table?
True.
Now, if you go to have a seat at the table, someone steals your chair and burns a cross in your front yard,
Right.
that's a different story, right?
Right.
But generally speaking, I try to encourage people to make sure before you make an assumption to extend your hand
Yeah.
and make sure it's not just a situation where they only know about a certain community off of what they've seen on TV
Right.
or what they've heard on the news. So don't assume.
Yeah.
And that goes both ways, right? Is that,
Absolutely.
you know, when you go to events, do you engage everyone? Are you open to engaging everyone? Even on the school board, you know, collectively, the interest should be that famous phrase you hear sometimes, the best interest of the child, right?
Yes.
And that means working together toward a common aim.
Yes.
So you've got an election for the seat coming up November 8th. I believe
November
it
8th,
is.
yes, sir.
Okay, and I believe it's Aaron Raxdell?
Yes.
You're running against?
Yes.
Okay. Now, but throw a curveball at you.
Okay.
Are there any positive things about her that you would share?
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you, Erin brings a wealth of experience. She's an educator. She understands the school system. And, you know, our platforms aren't too different. She supports all of our children, right? She supports our administration. She supports our teachers. She supports our parents having a voice on the school board. All those things are positives. Where her and I differ is that I'm going to say it, right? I will say, yes, all our students matter. Not just saying all our students, but saying all genders, all sexualities, all pronouns,
Okay.
all races, all cultures, they all matter. So I'm going to say it. I won't be careful with who I mean should be included in our classrooms and
Okay.
welcomed and making it a safe environment for them. But no, I have nothing but respect for Erin. I think she also makes a great candidate.
Yeah. And I ask that because, again, back to what I was saying earlier, I think it's important to be able to have differing views and perspectives without it equaling being arch enemies. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's one of the things. I don't know Erin, I've never met her either, but I appreciate you saying that, hey, you know, here's some things that you respect about her,
yeah.
and here's some areas where you differ. Because too often now you see it as always this rivalry where it's a binary choice between either I'm in cahoots with you or I'm out to destroy you. And I think that's a lose-lose situation.
It is.
When in fact, I think most people will find that they're somewhere largely in the middle
Yes.
on things. And, you know, if we can continue to work back beyond that, I think we can all get a little further. And as it relates to the school board, hopefully whoever's filling that seat in the end would be doing something that positively affects the outcome not only of my child who's there, but your kids and the other kids in the community, so that we have fewer instances where the county is making the news for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Oh, no, but I just wanted to say thank you for interviewing me today. This has been a good experience. I've enjoyed meeting you.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share with me, and we'll be putting this out on Guide to 575. Hopefully everyone will have a chance to take a look at it. And if you want to know more about Sean, you can go to voteseanjackson.com. I'm sure he has a ton of information out there.
That I do.
To share about more details on his position and thoughts on various issues. But I do appreciate Sean taking the time this afternoon or this morning, whichever it is. It's hot out here, so I'm thinking it feels like the afternoon, to sit down and speak with me and share his perspective and views about the upcoming race for the District 5 of the Cherokee County School Board. So again, it's Gerald Griffith, Guide to 575.